Picture this scenario for a second, all right? You are sitting in a high-level war room briefing.
Oh, setting the stakes right away. I like it.
Yeah, well, the maps are out, geopolitical tensions have spiked, and a major conflict halfway across the globe has just completely frozen international shipping lanes.
Right. A very real possibility these days.
Exactly. And in this environment, defense indigenization is no longer, just some bureaucratic buzzword about manufacturing weapons. It's the literal foundation of national survival.
Absolutely. Because we operate in a highly volatile neighborhood.
We do. And if the global supply chain shocks from the Russia-Ukraine war taught the world anything, it's that a nation incapable of arming itself is fundamentally incapable of defending itself.
Right. That vulnerability is really the driving force behind this massive policy pivot we're witnessing right now.
So that's our mission for this deep dive. We are going to map out how that fragility is being dismantled.
And we're going to break down India's defense indigenization strategy into a rigorous, high-scoring analytical framework.
Because if you need to condense this complex geopolitical shift into a top-tier briefing or, an exam answer or a strategic memo.
You need way more than just a list of government schemes.
Exactly. You need the structural problem, the hard data anchors, the deeper strategic significance, and, crucially, the persistent bottlenecks that still threaten the whole enterprise.
So to understand this modern framework, we really have to look at the historical baseline first.
Right. Where did we start?
Well, for decades, the domestic ecosystem was essentially a passive consumer. I mean, the country relied heavily on foreign imports.
Mostly from Russia and then later from Western partners, right?
Yeah, exactly. The assumption was, as long as the economy could support the purchases, foreign currency reserves would guarantee security.
But foreign currency means absolutely nothing if the cargo ships carrying critical radar components or engine spares just stop sailing because of sanctions.
Or blockades. Exactly.
Yeah.
So the core realization driving current policy is that relying on imported hardware creates an unacceptable strategic fragility.
We are moving from acting as the world's biggest weapons supermarket shopper to actually, pouring the concrete for our own factory floor.
That's a great way to put it. The overarching rationale has shifted from merely demonstrating, isolated capabilities to pursuing complete strategic autonomy.
Strategic autonomy, that's a key phrase there.
It is. It's about building a dual-use technological power where the industrial base supporting the military also drives advancements in the broader civilian economy.
But you can't just mandate a military-industrial complex into existence overnight.
No. You definitely cannot. It requires vast amounts of capital, strict enforcement, and a total overhaul of how the military procures its gear.
Which brings us directly to the tangible policy frameworks deployed to force this transition. Let's look at the data layer.
Right, because any serious analysis requires anchoring your argument to hard data. It shows the scale of the government's ambition.
So what's the foundational document here?
The foundational document is the Defense Production and Export Promotion Policy of 2020. You'll often see it referred to as the DPEPP.
DPPP. Got it. What are the key metrics we need to lock into memory?
It's the twin targets set for the year 2025. The policy mandates building a domestic defense manufacturing turnover of 1.75 lakh crore rupees.
1.75 lakh crore, that's massive.
It is. And within that output, the government expects 35,000 crore to come strictly from aerospace and defense exports.
Wait, 35,000 crore just from exports by 2025?
Exactly. It represents a staggering scale up from historical baselines.
But generating that kind of volume requires more than just, hoping the military buys local.
Right, and the mechanism forcing that behavior is the Defense Acquisition Procedure, or DAP 2020.
DAP 2020, what does that do practically?
It establishes a strict hierarchy for procurement. It places the Buy Indian category at the very top.
Specifically the IDDM classification, right?
Indigenously designed, developed, and manufactured. If equipment meets IDDM criteria, the military is structurally obligated to prioritize it over foreign alternatives.
But prioritizing local bids is one thing. Entrenched procurement habits are hard to break.
They are. So to guarantee that domestic manufacturers have a captive market, the Ministry of Defense introduced the Positive Indigenization Lists.
The PILs. And these take a highly aggressive approach, don't they?
Very aggressive. They function as outright import bans. The government has released 5 of these lists so far.
Detailing what, over 5,500 specific defense items?
Over 5,500, yes, ranging from complex weapon systems down to critical subcomponents. And they attach strict deadlines.
So once the deadline passes, the military is legally prohibited from importing it.
Exactly.
It's basically the geopolitical equivalent of cutting up your own credit cards.
That is exactly what it is.
I mean, they are intentionally eliminating the easy swipe and buy import option to force a crisis of necessity.
And it's working. The data shows this forced captivity is shifting the market. Over 3,000 of those listed items have already been successfully indigenized.
But creating captive demand only works if the domestic industry actually has the financial capacity to meet it.
Right. If you block imports without funding local R&D, you just degrade combat readiness.
So how do they solve that?
The framework relies heavily on grassroots innovation. A primary vehicle for this is IDEX, or Innovations for Defense Excellence.
Oh, right. Engaging startups instead of just relying on massive state-owned enterprises.
Exactly. IDEX has engaged over 600 startups to solve highly specific military challenges.
Because, I mean, startups aren't building entire aircraft carriers.
No, of course not.
But they are incredibly agile at solving niche problems like AI software for drone swarming or advanced encrypted communication meshes.
No. But to ensure these smaller companies can actually afford to build physical prototypes, the DRDO operates the Technology Development Fund.
The TDF. And didn't they recently bump up the funding limit for that?
They did. In recent budgets, the TDF funding limit was pushed to 50 crore rupees per project.
50 crore. That's the bridge that allows a brilliant software simulation to become a ruggedized piece of hardware the Army can actually field test.
Precisely. Now, alongside the software, building complete defense platforms requires massive physical infrastructure.
Which is the rationale behind the two major defense industrial corridors, right? In Uttar Pradesh and Tamil Nadu.
Yes. And a defense corridor is not just a single factory. It's a planned geographical clustering of the entire supply chain.
So you place the metallurgy company next to the aerospace component manufacturer.
Right. And the government builds shared testing facilities nearby, like wind tunnels or ballistics ranges.
I saw the investment potential for those corridors is 53,439 crore rupees.
Yes, and over 8,600 crore is already actively invested.
Wow. But managing a supply chain of that magnitude, especially replacing 5,500 banned imports, that requires intense logistical tracking.
It does. And the administrative tool handling this is the SRAGN pool.
Right, the online dashboard.
Yes. The government lists specific components that still need to be indigenized, allowing private companies to step up and claim the contracts.
And what's the scale looking like on the portal?
Well, as of February 2025, over 14,000 individual items have been indigenized and logged through SRH.
14,000. Okay, so those figures, the 1.75 lakh crore turnover, the 5,500 banned items, the 50 crore TDF limit, that's our empirical foundation.
Exactly. But citing data is only the first layer. A truly high-scoring analytical brief requires decoding the interlinking mechanisms.
We have to map out how defense manufacturing acts as an engine connecting national security to economic resilience, right?
And to technological advancement and global diplomatic standing.
So let's run that interlinking engine, starting with national security and supply chain resilience.
We touched on Russia-Ukraine earlier. The mechanical lesson there goes far beyond shipping delays.
Right. If you don't control the production pipeline of your ammunition and spare parts,
A foreign power basically holds a veto over your combat readiness.
indigenization insulates the military's operational tempo from geopolitical blackmail?
Exactly. And the autonomy gained there immediately spills over into the diplomatic arena.
Defense diplomacy. We're seeing systems like the Tejas fighter jet and the Akash missile systems entering the global market.
Right. And exporting an Akash missile is a fundamentally different geopolitical act than exporting textiles or software.
Let me push the boundaries on that concept a bit.
Go for it.
When a domestic contractor sells a missile system to a partner nation, is that genuinely shifting diplomatic leverage, or is it mostly just a lucrative financial transaction?
Oh no, it is the ultimate tool of diplomatic leverage. Selling a major platform creates a decades-long umbilical cord.
An umbilical cord? How so?
Well, when a country buys the Akash system, they aren't just buying hardware. They are locking their military into long-term maintenance contracts, software upgrades, and joint training exercises.
It ensures interoperability between the two militaries.
Yes. The nation transitions from being a net consumer of security to an active regional security provider. It's a massive force multiplier for soft power.
You're selling an entire ecosystem that structurally ties the buying nation to your geopolitical orbit.
Exactly. And that ecosystem requires a massive economic engine back home to sustain it.
Right. The defense corridors in UP and Tamil Nadu aren't operating in a vacuum. This creates a domino effect of industrialization.
This is where it becomes a tool for inclusive economic growth. High-tech manufacturing gets pushed into Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities.
Because building complex weapons requires hyper-specialized subcomponents.
Right. It injects capital into local MSMEs focusing on precision metallurgy, aerospace electronics, and AI. The defense sector essentially subsidizes the technological upgrading of the civilian base.
Okay, so we've mapped the government's response and the strategic significance. We have the data anchors and the geopolitical rationale.
But an elite strategic analysis cannot function as a PR document.
No, it requires a harsh critical evaluation layer. Because despite the 1.75 lakh crore targets, the system still suffers from severe structural vulnerabilities.
Balancing achievements with a realistic assessment of institutional gaps is the hallmark of top-tier analysis.
So what's the most critical vulnerability threatening this framework?
It's the core technology deficit. The 14,000 items on the ESRJAN portal are incredible progress, but they're largely subcomponents, outer shells, assembly-level hardware.
Right, we are still heavily reliant on foreign manufacturers for the heavy hitters.
Exactly. We face paralyzing shortfalls in the foundational technologies that actually power modern warfare.
Aircraft jet engines, advanced semiconductors, precision electronics.
Yes. We import the foundational tech for submarines, fifth-generation fighter jets, and long-endurance drones.
So a domestic company might manufacture the fuselage, but the radar processing chips and the turbine engine are deeply dependent on foreign IP.
The true brain and heart of the machine. The mechanics of a jet engine explain why this is so hard to close.
It's not just a matter of reverse engineering it.
Not at all. An advanced jet engine requires turbine blades made from single crystal superalloys capable of operating hotter than the melting point of the metal itself.
Wow.
You cannot reverse engineer that metallurgy. It requires decades of sustained, highly funded research.
And because we spent those decades buying completed jets, that foundational R&D was largely skipped.
Which exposes the military during crises and contradicts the goal of strategic autonomy.
This R&D deficit creates another bottleneck, doesn't it? The valley of death.
Yes. Overall R&D expenditure as a percentage of GDP remains persistently low.
We have premier agencies like DRDO developing highly capable systems in their labs.
But there is a massive disconnect between a successful lab innovation and mass producing it for the armed forces.
Because standing up the supply chains and standardizing manufacturing tolerances takes immense resources.
Exactly. The transition to a field-ready system is precarious. Without guaranteed long-term procurement orders, the financial risk is often too high.
So the innovation survives the lab but dies before it reaches the factory floor.
Yes.
It's basically like a chef creating a groundbreaking Michelin star dish in a private test kitchen.
I love that analogy.
The recipe is flawless, but the chef doesn't possess the commercial factory infrastructure or capital to manufacture millions of those exact meals for the public.
The brilliance remains trapped in the test kitchen, and the entity expected to provide that commercialization, the private sector, encounters severe bureaucratic friction.
Right. Defense manufacturing demands incredibly long gestation periods.
A company might invest billions over 10 years developing an armored vehicle, facing constant uncertainty about procurement pipelines from a risk-averse bureaucracy.
And even when they successfully build a prototype, they hit the physical limits of testing infrastructure.
There's a severe lack of dedicated testing and certification ranges for the private sector.
So a company finalizes an advanced drone, and it just sits in a queue for years waiting for range time.
Yes. And in a landscape where electronic warfare evolves month to month, a multi-year delay is a death sentence. By the time it's cleared, the tech is obsolete.
Okay, we've dissected the problem from every angle. Now we need to convert this war room discussion into actionable output.
This is the answer: writing conversion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you're tasked with distilling this into a highly structured briefing or exam answer, how do you map the architecture?
Well, let's say you need a concise 150-word intelligence summary. Your opening hook must establish the immediate stakes.
Don't start by listing policies. Lead with the overarching vulnerability.
Right. Cite the global supply chain freezes seen during the Russia-Ukraine conflict to justify the urgency.
And then transition directly into the core mechanics.
Your body paragraph should deliver a rapid three-point analysis. First, outline the force demand mechanism.
Citing DAP 2020 and the IDDM prioritization.
Second, highlight institutional capacity building. Point to IDEX and the 50 core TDF funding limits.
And third, immediately pivot to the reality check.
Yes. Acknowledge the core technology deficit in jet engines and semiconductors.
And your concluding recommendation must address that deficit directly, advocating for mandated increases in R&D and private sector testing infrastructure.
Exactly. It's a clear hierarchy. Threat, mechanism, capacity, flaw, and solution.
What if the requirement is a comprehensive 250-word strategic brief?
Then you must map the interlinking dimensions explicitly. Your context defines the historical pivot to an active technology developer.
Then partition the analysis into distinct dimensions: national security, economic wealth, decentralization, and defense diplomacy.
You're demonstrating that you understand how a missile factory in UP impacts diplomatic leverage abroad.
After those dimensions, you apply the critical evaluation layer.
Detail the bureaucratic friction, the valley of death, and the persistent import dependency.
And the recommendations need to sound administrative and systemic.
Right. Propose deeper public-private partnerships, institutional strengthening, and regulatory reforms.
Finally, elevate the brief in the conclusion. Tie it to the vision of Viksit Bharat 2047.
Framing the elimination of vulnerabilities as the prerequisite for true strategic autonomy.
And to make sure it reads with administrative authority, you must deploy specific vocabulary.
Make sure you integrate concepts like strategic autonomy, the Buy-Indian IDDM classification, positive indigenization lists, defense diplomacy, and the multiplier effect.
Using this terminology proves you're evaluating systemic governance patterns, not just summarizing news.
It separates a passive summary from a professional strategic analysis.
Let's lock down the core data layer with our final revision capsule.
Okay, rapid fire.
If you're building a mental cheat sheet, the primary anchor is the DPEPP 2025 target.
1.75 lakh crore total manufacturing turnover and 35,000 crores specifically for exports.
Following that is the aggressive enforcement mechanism.
The 5 positive indigenization lists, effectively banning over 4,500 imported items,
And we track that replacement on the SRIAGEN portal,
which has already logged over 14,000 successfully indigenized components.
driven by grassroots financial pipelines.
The TDF raising its limit to 50 crore and IDEX actively pulling over 600 startups into the ecosystem.
Now, a probable exam question to pressure test your understanding. Critically evaluate the defense indigenization strategy in the context of achieving strategic autonomy. What are the persistent institutional challenges?
Build your answer around supply chain resilience, dual-use technology, and the R&D valley of death to guarantee a top-tier evaluation.
Let's get a 30-second summary to wrap it up.
The nation is aggressively pivoting from a vulnerable arms importer into an emerging dual-use tech power. Traumatized by supply chain shocks, policies like the 2025 targets and import bans are forcing the ecosystem to mature. Initiatives like IDEX and the defense corridors spur innovation and decentralized growth. However, severe institutional friction, the R&D valley of death, lack of testing infrastructure, and deficits in foundational tech like jet engines still expose the military to risk. Overcoming these through streamlined public-private partnerships remains the only path to self-reliance.
Excellent. That covers the complete architecture. But before we close out this deep dive, consider a final provocative puzzle to analyze on your own.
No, I like a good puzzle.
We began by discussing the transition to building our own factory floor to ensure national survival. If the structural gaps are successfully bridged?
If we finally master that complex metallurgy and semiconductor fabrication.
Exactly. How will that massive leap in dual-use capability redefine not just the defense sector, but the entirety of the civilian tech economy by the year 2047?
That is the ultimate question.
Think on it. Until next time, keep analyzing.